You're stopped at a red light, hands on the wheel, radio low, mind half somewhere else. And then it pulls up next to you, a brand new luxury SUV. Glossy black paint that reflects the city lights like a mirror. Massive rims slowly rolling to a stop. The interior glows softly. Screens, ambient lighting, everything clean and deliberate. It looks expensive in a way that doesn't ask for attention. It assumes it. You glance over, just for a second, and without meaning to, your brain fills in the blanks. They've made it. They're doing better than me. Whatever they did, it worked. You don't know who they are. You don't know what they earn. You don't know what they owe. But for a brief moment, something subtle happens. You feel slightly behind. Not devastated, not panicked, just off, like you missed a turn somewhere. Like there's a version of your life where you're in that seat instead of this one. The light hasn't changed yet, but the comparison already has. Here's the strange part. You're not admiring the person, you're admiring the object. And yet your brain treats it as proof of success. That SUV becomes a shortcut, a symbol, a story. It tells you everything you think you need to know without telling you anything at all. You don't see the payment. You don't see the trade-offs. You don't see the stress or the lack of flexibility or the years of future income already promised away. You just see the signal. And that signal quietly does something dangerous. It convinces you that looking successful and being successful are the same thing. They're not. And the gap between those two ideas is one of the most expensive mistakes people make with money. Even smart people, even disciplined people, even people who do everything right. That red light turns green. Both cars move forward. But financially, they may be heading in completely different directions. That moment at the red light feels harmless. But it isn't. Because it reveals a quiet illusion that shapes more financial decisions than almost anyone wants to admit. We've been trained to associate visible success with real success, to treat what we can see as evidence of how well someone is actually doing. And once that wiring clicks on, it doesn't just change how we judge other people, it changes how we spend our own money. My name is Philip, and I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible psychology behind money decisions, especially the ones that don't feel like decisions at all, the ones that happen automatically, emotionally, without a spreadsheet involved. If you're someone who's earning decent money, doing the responsible things, and still occasionally feels behind when you look around, this video is for you. Make sure to hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see money a little more clearly, because understanding this illusion can quietly change the entire trajectory of your financial life. Here's the thing most people don't realize. Your reaction at that red light isn't a personal failure, it's biology. For most of human history, status and survival were tightly linked. If someone had better tools, better shelter, better access to resources, they were more likely to live and more likely to be listened to. Your brain evolved to notice visible signals of advantage because, for thousands of years, those signals actually meant something. The problem is that your brain hasn't updated its software. In a modern economy, visibility and wealth have drifted far apart, but your instincts still treat them as the same thing. When you see something that looks expensive, your brain doesn't ask, what's their balance sheet? It asks, are they winning? And that shortcut used to work. If someone in a village had the best tools, the strongest shelter, or the most surplus food, that was real wealth. You could see it. You could verify it. There was no consumer debt, no leasing, no financial engineering. The signal and the reality were aligned. Today, they're not. Modern status signals are incredibly easy to manufacture. You can look successful long before you are successful, sometimes without ever becoming successful at all. The object does the talking for you. It broadcasts competence, security, and achievement, even if none of those things exist underneath the surface, and your brain doesn't question it. That's why this illusion is so powerful. It bypasses logic. It operates below conscious thought. You don't sit there and decide to compare yourself. The comparison just happens. What makes this especially dangerous is that status signals are public, but wealth is private. You see the purchase, not the plan. You see the outcome, not the trade-off. You see the snapshot, not the trajectory. And over time, this rewires how people define doing well. Not by freedom, not by flexibility, not by optionality, but by appearances. Once that shift happens, money quietly stops being a tool and starts becoming a performance. And when money becomes a performance, the goal is no longer to build something durable. The goal becomes to look like you already have. This paradox comes straight from one of the most important finance books I've ever read, The Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness by Morgan Housel. And once you see it, it's almost impossible to forget. Before Housel became one of the most respected financial writers in the world, he worked a much more ordinary job. In his early 20s, he was a valet at a luxury hotel. Day after day, he parked expensive cars. Cars most people only see in magazines or slow down to stare at on the highway. And at first, he assumed something very human. He assumed the people driving those cars wanted admiration, respect, a quiet acknowledgement from strangers that they had made it, that the car was a signal, not just of wealth, but of success as a person. But over time, he noticed something strange. When people walked past these cars, they didn't look at the driver. They didn't think about the person who owned it. They didn't wonder what kind of life they lived or what choices they'd made. They imagined themselves in the seat. They thought about how they would look driving it, how they would feel pulling up to a restaurant, how they would be perceived if that car were theirs. The driver, the actual human being, barely registered. And that's the moment the paradox clicks into place. The admiration people think they're buying with a visible symbol of wealth doesn't attach to them at all. It attaches to the object. The car becomes the star. The person disappears. That's the man in the car paradox. The buyer assumes the purchase earns them respect. The observer uses the purchase as a mirror for their own desires. The respect never transfers. And here's why that matters for money. The person who bought the car knows the full story. They know the payment, the opportunity cost, the trade-offs, what didn't get funded because this did. They feel the weight of the decision every single month. The observer doesn't. The observer sees a snapshot, not a balance sheet, a moment, not a trajectory, a signal, not a sacrifice. So the observer walks away thinking that's what success looks like, without ever seeing the hidden cost required to project that image. This is where things quietly go wrong, because once you internalize that admiration follows visible spending, it's easy to believe spending is how you move up, that looking successful is the same as being successful, that if you can just reach the next signal, the next upgrade, the feeling will finally stick. But the paradox guarantees it won't. Every visible symbol of wealth is admired by people imagining themselves, not by people evaluating you, which means the emotional payoff is fleeting, external, and unreliable. Meanwhile, the financial cost is permanent. And that's why this concept matters so much. It explains why so many people with high incomes feel financially fragile, why so much money goes toward things meant to be seen, why real wealth, the kind that buys freedom, time, and resilience, is often invisible. The man in the car looks impressive at the red light, but the real advantage usually belongs to the person you never notice, the one whose money is doing its work quietly, the one who doesn't need the signal, the one who understands that admiration is loud, but wealth is silent. What makes the man in the car paradox so expensive isn't the car itself. It's everything you don't see when you look at it. Because every visible upgrade comes with an invisible cost. And the problem is that cost doesn't show up in photos or Instagram or conversations or quick comparisons at red lights. It only shows up later, quietly, in the form of fewer options. When someone stretches to look successful, they're usually not just buying an object, they're committing future income, locking in obligations, narrowing the range of choices they'll have if life changes. That's the real trade-off. An expensive purchase doesn't just take money, it takes flexibility. It can mean saying no to opportunities that don't pay immediately. It can mean staying in a job longer than you want because the payment doesn't care how you feel about your work. It can mean carrying low-level stress that never fully turns off because there's no margin for error. But none of that is visible. What is visible is the result, the upgraded lifestyle, the polished exterior, the signal that says, "I'm doing well." This is where opportunity cost becomes dangerous, because opportunity cost is emotional, not mathematical. It's not just the money you didn't save, it's the options you quietly removed from your future. The ability to walk away, the ability to pause, the ability to absorb a bad month without panic. Those are the things status spending often trades away. And the cruel irony is that the people making these sacrifices rarely feel rich. They feel trapped, because the upgrade that was supposed to represent progress now has to be maintained. The lifestyle that looked like success becomes the floor you're afraid to fall below. From the outside, it looks like momentum. From the inside, it feels like pressure. This is why visible success can be such a misleading signal. It doesn't tell you how much control someone has over their time. It doesn't tell you how resilient they are. It doesn't tell you how close they are to a financial edge. It only tells you that money has already been spent. And once you understand that, the question shifts. Not, can I afford this? But what future am I quietly giving up to look like I've already arrived? Imagine two people earning the same income, same city, same age, same paycheck hitting their account every 2 weeks. Let's call them Sam and Oliver. On paper, there's no meaningful difference between them. If you lined up their tax returns, you'd struggle to tell who was doing better. But their financial lives move in opposite directions, and the reason has nothing to do with how much they earn. Sam decides early on that looking successful matters. When the income goes up, the lifestyle follows. A nicer apartment, new furniture, upgrades that feel reasonable because the payments fit, at least for now. Nothing feels reckless. In fact, from the outside, Sam looks like they're doing great, comfortable, established, on track. Oliver makes a quieter choice. He lives below what he could technically afford. The apartment is fine, not impressive. The car is reliable, not exciting. His spending decisions don't draw attention, mostly because there's nothing to show off. Same income, completely different outcomes. At first, Sam appears ahead. The signals are louder. There is social validation, a sense of progress that others can see. Oliver looks average, easy to overlook. Nothing about his life suggests financial success. But here's where the paths start to separate. Sam's income is already spoken for. Payments arrive every month with no regard for layoffs, burnout, or unexpected expenses. Flexibility disappears quietly. Career choices narrow. Risk starts to feel dangerous, not because Sam is irresponsible, but because there's no margin to absorb a mistake. Oliver's money behaves differently, not because he earns more, but because less of it is committed. He builds buffers, options, time. He can say no more easily. He can pivot without panic. Surprises don't immediately turn into crises. None of this is visible at a red light. From the outside, Sam still looks more successful. The lifestyle is easier to notice than the restraint. But over time, the gap widens. Sam feels constant pressure to maintain what he's built. Raises get absorbed. Bonuses disappear. Any disruption feels threatening. The lifestyle depends on the future cooperating, and the future rarely does. Oliver compounds quietly. Not just money, but freedom. Each year of lower fixed costs expands his range of choices. His income doesn't feel fragile because it isn't supporting an image, it's supporting a life. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Financial success isn't about how much you make, it's about how much optionality your income creates. Sam manages appearances. Oliver builds leverage. One looks impressive in the moment, the other becomes powerful over time. The reason status spending is such a powerful trap is that it never actually ends. There is no finish line for looking successful. Status is relative by definition. It's psychology. This is what psychologists call hedonic adaptation. It only exists in comparison to the people around you. And the moment you upgrade, the reference point shifts. What once felt impressive quickly becomes normal. What felt like success becomes the baseline, and suddenly there's another rung above you. This is why status spending feels so unsatisfying over time. Sam doesn't wake up one day and think, "I've made it." He wakes up and notices the next upgrade, a bigger place, a newer version, a slightly better neighborhood. Not because he's greedy, but because the environment keeps changing the definition of normal. And the problem is, the people setting that standard are often doing the same thing he is, stretching to keep up. Status is a moving target that speeds up as you chase it. What makes this especially dangerous is that status pressure isn't just internal, it's structural. It shows up in housing markets, social circles, schools, and workplaces. When everyone around you is spending at the edge of what they can afford, that edge starts to feel reasonable. Banks reinforce it, advertisers normalize it, algorithms amplify it. Over time, spending to maintain status stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like maintenance. This is where the trap closes. Once your fixed costs are built around appearances, you lose the ability to step back. You can't easily downshift without feeling like you're failing. You can't take a pay cut, change careers, or take time off without everything wobbling. The lifestyle that was supposed to signal success becomes the thing that controls you. And here's the cruel irony. The people you're trying to impress are rarely paying attention. They're too busy worrying about their own position, their own comparisons, their own sense of being behind. So you end up making permanent financial commitments to win temporary, mostly imaginary approval. Meanwhile, the cost is very real. Stress that doesn't turn off, decisions made under pressure, a future that feels narrower every year. Status feels like progress because it's visible, but financially, it's often just motion, expensive motion in place. The trap isn't that nice things exist. The trap is believing that looking successful will ever feel like enough. Because as long as success is defined by comparison, it will always be just one upgrade away. When you strip away the noise, real wealth doesn't buy flash, it buys control. This is the part that almost never shows up in conversations about money because it's hard to photograph and impossible to flex. But it's the part that actually changes how life feels on a daily basis. Real wealth buys time, not free time in the abstract, but control over how your time is used. It's the ability to slow down a little without panic, to take a longer view, to not feel like every hour has to justify itself financially. When your money isn't fully committed, your calendar starts to loosen, and that alone reduces stress in ways people underestimate. Real wealth buys the ability to say no. No to work that drains you. No to commitments that don't align. No to bad deals that only look attractive because you feel cornered. Most people think saying no is about confidence or personality. It's not. It's about margin. When every dollar of your income is already assigned, saying no feels reckless. When you have buffers, saying no becomes rational. Real wealth buys resilience. Life is not smooth. People get sick, jobs change, industries shift, emergencies happen at inconvenient times. Wealth doesn't prevent those things, but it changes how they land. A setback becomes a problem to solve, not a crisis that cascades. You stop living one unexpected expense away from panic. This is one of the quietest benefits of wealth and one of the most powerful. Real wealth buys optionality. Options are the ability to choose between paths without desperation, to pivot careers, to start something new, to step back temporarily without everything collapsing. Optionality isn't about quitting work forever. It's about not being trapped in a single narrow outcome because your fixed costs demand constant compliance. People who have options think differently. They negotiate differently. They take better risks because they're not betting their entire life on one outcome. Real wealth buys peace of mind, not happiness in the motivational poster sense, but mental quiet, fewer background calculations running in your head, fewer trade-offs forced by urgency, fewer decisions made under pressure. This isn't about luxury, it's about cognitive space. When money stops demanding your attention, your thinking improves. And finally, real wealth buys independence from comparison. This one surprises people. When you're not spending to maintain an image, you stop measuring yourself against strangers. Other people's upgrades stop feeling like signals you're falling behind. Their choices become neutral information instead of personal verdicts. You don't need to win the comparison game if you're not playing it. None of these benefits show up at a red light. You can't see someone's flexibility or margin or peace of mind. You can't tell who has options and who is locked into a future they can't easily change. Real wealth works quietly, behind the scenes, shaping decisions long before they're visible. That's why it's so often misunderstood. We mistake visibility for success because visibility is easy to observe. But the things that actually make life better, time, choice, resilience, and calm, are internal and invisible. And once you internalize that, the goal shifts, not to look rich, not to signal success, but to build a life that feels stable, flexible, and free, even when no one else is watching. Before we go any further, it's important to be clear about what I'm not saying. This isn't an argument against enjoying money. It's not a claim that buying nice things is wrong, shallow, or irresponsible. Money's meant to be used, and there's nothing noble about deprivation for its own sake. This also isn't a call to live like a monk or reject every upgrade. The problem isn't spending, it's why you're spending. There's a meaningful difference between buying something because it genuinely improves your life and buying something because it improves how your life looks to other people. I'm not saying you should never enjoy status. I'm saying status is a terrible financial compass. It points you toward visibility, not stability, toward approval, not freedom. And this isn't about judging anyone who's made different choices. Almost all of us have fallen into this trap at some point, often without realizing it. The system rewards visibility, encourages comparison, and rarely highlights the trade-offs. The goal here isn't to feel guilty about past decisions, it's to understand the mechanics behind them. Because once you can see the illusion clearly, you're in a much better position to decide, intentionally, which purchases actually move your life forward, and which ones just look like they do. If the man in the car paradox is about confusion, then escaping it is about intentionality. Not perfection, not extreme discipline, just clear rules that protect you from decisions that feel good in the moment but cost you later. The first rule is this: separate enjoyment from signaling. Ask yourself a simple question before any upgrade. Would I still want this if no one ever saw it? If the answer is no, that's a signal, and signals are expensive. This doesn't mean you never buy it. It means you slow down because purchases driven by visibility tend to have the weakest long-term payoff. Second, build buffers before upgrades. Any visible lifestyle improvement should come after you've bought flexibility, emergency savings, low fixed costs, margin. If an upgrade disappears the moment your income wobbles, it wasn't progress, it was fragility disguised as success. Third, measure wealth in time, not things. Instead of asking what you can afford, ask how many months of freedom your savings represent. 1 month? 6 months? A year? This reframes money away from consumption and toward resilience. Objects depreciate, time compounds. Fourth, cap your fixed costs aggressively. This is where most people get trapped. Fixed costs turn temporary decisions into permanent commitments. Rent, car payments, subscriptions, and lifestyle obligations quietly lock in future labor. Keep these low enough that your life can absorb change without breaking. Fifth, upgrade your utility, not your image. Spend money on things that remove friction from your life: reliability, health, skills, and stability. Buy the version that solves the problem permanently, not the one that looks best. Fewer breakdowns, fewer emergencies, fewer forced decisions. These upgrades don't impress anyone, but they pay you back every day. Sixth, delay public upgrades. This sounds small, but it's powerful. Waiting 6 to 12 months before a visible upgrade does two things. First, it filters out impulse decisions driven by comparison. Second, it gives hedonic adaptation time to do its work, often revealing that the urge fades on its own. And finally, define your own finish line. Status is infinite because it's relative. Wealth becomes stable only when you decide what enough looks like for you, not for your peers, not for your industry, not for the algorithm. Write it down, a lifestyle you could sustain on a lower income, a version of life that doesn't require constant escalation. That becomes your anchor. Escaping the paradox doesn't mean opting out of modern life. It means opting out of the need to be seen. Because the moment your money stops trying to impress other people, it starts doing what it was always supposed to do, giving you options, giving you room, and giving you a future that isn't dependent on appearances. Let's go back to that red light. Same intersection, same pause, the same moment where your eyes drift to the car next to you before you even realize you're doing it. But now, the picture looks different. You still see the glossy paint, the clean lines, the quiet confidence of something expensive, but you also see what you can't see, the payment you'll never know, the flexibility that may or may not exist, the future that's already been partially spent. And suddenly, the spell breaks, because you understand that the car was never the point. It was never proof of security or freedom or success. It was just a signal, one that says nothing about the life behind the wheel. The real story has always been happening out of frame. It's happening in the quiet decisions that don't get noticed, the choice to keep fixed costs low, the discipline to build buffers before upgrades, the restraint to value flexibility over appearance, the patience to let wealth compound instead of performing it. At that same red light, the person who looks most successful might be the one under the most pressure, and the person you barely notice could be the one with the most options. That's the uncomfortable truth. We live in a world that rewards visibility, but wealth doesn't need an audience to work. It just needs time, margin, and intention. So the next time you feel that familiar pull, that quiet comparison, don't ask yourself whether you're behind. Ask yourself something better. Is my money buying approval, or is it buying freedom? If this video helped you see money a little differently, do me a favor and share it with someone who might be stuck chasing the signal instead of the substance. And if you want more conversations like this, the kind that focus on building real leverage instead of looking rich, make sure to subscribe. Because the goal isn't to win the red light, it's to build a life where you don't care who's next to you when it turns green.